It's Tuesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Hope everybody is having a great day out there today. Terrific show coming up. Tuesdays in the fall become rather formatted, but in a good way. Andrew Krammer joins me in a little bit to talk Vikings football. A little film review from Sunday's win over the 49ers, an impressive one at that. Plus, he will bear the brunt of my 3 hot takeaways. We'll see what he thinks of them this week. After Andrew, my friend Keith Rashad joins me for some Vikings poetry. The only proper way to express your feelings about the Vikings is through poetry. We always say, again, overwhelmingly positive edition of it just because of how well the Vikings played Sunday. They are 2-0, of course, so far this season. A lot more optimism than we might have imagined at this point in the season. Big game for the Lynx tonight. We'll set that up at the end of the show and probably try to frame up what is at stake the rest of the season. Playoffs start less than a week from now. Probably start Sunday for the Lynx, one way or the other. So we will set that up at the end of the show. First, though, what did I miss? 2 things here, both of them huge. We're going to start with Kirk Cousins because this is it's a double lesson in how the narrative can change, right? Atlanta wins 22-21 last night, Monday Night Football at Philadelphia, defeating both the Eagles and the Eagles' hubris in that game. Atlanta down 21-15 late in the game. Eagles driving deep into Atlanta territory. Sorry, it was 18-15 at that point. It's 18-15. Atlanta down. Eagles driving deep in Atlanta territory. Cousins had been okay so far to that point. He had done some of the things you want him to do. He made a really nice throw on a 0 blitz to put the Falcons ahead 15-10. But then Philadelphia had come back, scored, gone ahead. Falcons hadn't been able to move the ball. It was the classic Cousins game up to that point. Nice things, some bad things, some throws that you're like, it wasn't terrible, but what are you doing that for? It's 3rd and 12, you got 8 yards, stuff like that. It was the classic Cousins game, the good Kirk and the bad Kirk, and they were probably going to lose on Monday Night Football because they were down 3. Atlanta had burned all their timeouts. It's like 1:43 left. Philadelphia's got the ball 3rd and 3 at like the Atlanta 6, something like that. They call a pass. Now, that's risky, right? Because Atlanta's out of timeouts. If you run the ball, you guarantee that the worst thing that's going to happen is Atlanta's going to get the ball back with a little less than a minute left and have to go the length of the field either for a touchdown if you kick the field goal or a field goal if you go for it on 4th down after not making it on 3rd down and you don't make it. So you've got that. Instead, Philadelphia calls a pass play. Now the pass play is there. It's a pretty simple execution. It's a good throw to Saquon Barkley. It's like maybe a little bit of a reach to grab it, but it's pretty much right in his hands. He drops it. Clock stops. 4th down for the Eagles. So all of a sudden, they've got a decision to make. The right decision, according to the data in that situation, is to go for it, not to kick the field goal. If you make it there, game over. Either a touchdown or a 1st down, game over. If you miss it, you probably have the other team playing for a field goal, not a touchdown, so you've still got a chance to win in overtime. They instead go for the field goal. They make it. It's 21-15. Atlanta's got like a minute 38 left. They march right down the field. Kirk Cousins marches them right down the field against the softest defense I ever saw. So this is where my brain starts turning. I'm like, I've seen this game before. What does this remind me of? What the whole game ends up reminding me of is watching the 2021 Vikings play against each other. Just who can give this away more? Who can make a play then seemingly crush themselves with boneheaded plays, with bad defense, with soft coverage? That is what it reminded me of because Philadelphia played the absolute worst garbage defense I've ever seen on that last drive. They got no pass rush. They're playing soft coverage. Cousins just loops in a few passes. All of a sudden, they're down to like the 7. And then the guy's wide open in the end zone. London's wide open and touchdown, 22-21. By the way, they get an unsportsmanlike call for celebrating the touchdown, have to make a 48-yard extra point to go ahead, but they do it. They go up 22-21. They pick off Hurts at the end. It's the kind of game where you're walking away saying, how did Philadelphia lose? And man, I feel like there were 3 or 4 of those in that 2021 Vikings season. The last one where Cousins and Zimmer were together. The one where they shook each other after the Detroit game when Cousins shouted at him, "Do you like that?" And Cousins, Zimmer pushed him back, things like that. The tension kind of building in those moments. Felt like the Vikings offense against the Vikings defense. It just happened to be that Cousins, in the end, got to go against the 2021 Vikings defense, made the plays to win. So that was what that game felt like. I didn't think Cousins was great. He was very good in that last drive. Got to give him that. I did not think he was great. He was pretty mediocre. Probably would have gone down with a game that had like 170 passing yards, 15 points put up if Philadelphia doesn't completely botch the end of that game. But it happens a different way. Philadelphia botches it. Cousins marches him down. Touchdown. Narrative completely changes. As I said at the beginning of the show, completely changes now. The narrative of the game changes. The narrative of Cousins changes. Now, all of a sudden, last week is forgotten. The shaky debut is forgotten. Cousins ends up going like 21 of 29 for 240, 2 touchdowns, massive QBR, good primetime performance, comeback win, all of those things. Everything is forgotten. Everything is forgiven from last week when it looked like, man, is his Achilles going to be okay? Did they just waste $100+ million on a quarterback who can't play anymore? He looked much more like himself. Even before the heroics, he did look much more like himself. But now the narrative completely flips. I tweeted earlier Monday, like, hey, he's got a chance to either destroy the narrative or it's going to build. I felt like before the final drive, it was kind of a push. He played better than he did last week, but it still wasn't the Cousins you always wanted to see. Now the narrative has changed. Now, it doesn't mean it's changed forever. They got to play the Chiefs next week. Still don't know exactly how this will hold up over the course of a season. He probably should get better as the year goes on, not worse, as he gets more comfortable in the system, as he gets to trust his foot more. The Achilles coming back from that injury, but as of right now, he has completely changed the narrative, given a gift by the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles, masquerading as the 2021 Vikings, allowing 2021 Kirk Cousins to come back and win on Monday Night Football. It was a crucial enough, big enough game that I had to relegate the Twins to number 2. Maybe it's just as well. I think people are tired of this team, tired of wondering if they're going to hang on. It's getting more tenuous by the day. They lose 4-3 last night, waste a good Pablo Lopez start. Stop me if you've heard that before. They've wasted like 3 or 4 Pablo Lopez, Bailey Ober starts in the last few weeks. Lopez comes out of the game up. Griffin Jax bails him out of the 7th, but Jax, holding on to a 3-2 lead, gives up a 2-run home run, pitching his 2nd inning in the 8th. Twins lose to the Guardians 4-3. Any pretense of getting back in the division race obliterated. They are now just a game and a half up on Detroit. A game and a half. 2 in the loss column. And I don't know if that's preferable or not preferable. It means the Twins have the extra game to play the way they're playing right now. I don't know if I'd want that extra game to play or not. But so they're just hanging on, clinging on right now. They do have the tiebreaker against Detroit, so it's kind of like being up 2.5 games if you want to get technical. Mariners just 2 back. Boston just 4 back. Remember, the Twins got to play the Guardians 3 more times, then play Boston 3 times. So that's dicey right there. They've wasted a Pablo Lopez start. Yeah, they're going to get another Bailey Ober start on this trip. They're going to get a Pablo Lopez start later in Boston, but they've got to find a way to squeeze out a few wins on this trip. It seems very tenuous, feels very tenuous. They just plopped a guy from Baltimore, a guy that they claimed off of waivers, Cole Irvin, who had some success earlier this year, had a couple decent years with Oakland a few years ago, can give you some innings. Derek Falvey saying, we were thinking, how do we lengthen out what we already have? He could be your prototypical swingman who can pitch out of the bullpen. We don't have a left-handed starter in the mix right now either. He just adds another guy that we think can help. Falvey also said our view is to get to know him a little bit, get to know what he's trying to do, and our pitching guys already have some ideas about ways where he could be a little bit more like he was early in the year. He had a nice shutout streak early in the year. Hopefully we can identify some things that he can do well for us that complement what we already have. It's interesting to just plop a guy out of waivers in mid-September, potentially put him in the middle of a playoff race, and they're even talking about maybe starting him. Now, I don't think that's a terrible idea given that they've got 3 rookies right now in the rotation. Woods Richardson has hit a wall. Festa is the one I trust the most, but he's still, we still don't get more than 4 or 5 innings from him if you're saying that you're the Twins. And Zebby Matthews just hasn't had it the last 3 or 4 starts. They're getting nothing out of these guys. No innings, no quality. If you're talking about throwing this guy into the middle of the rotation in a pennant race, hoping that he can give you something, it's desperate, but it's not dumb. So this is the state of the Twins right now. A guy that the Orioles didn't want. The Orioles, by the way, also battling for a playoff spot. A guy the Orioles didn't want. They release him. Suddenly he's on the Twins. Suddenly he could be factoring into the playoff race, giving them a left-handed starter. That's the state of things right now. That's where they are after blowing a game against Cleveland, after losing a Pablo Lopez game. They got to figure out a way to turn it around pretty quick, or this is going to be one of the all-time collapses in their history. Let's bring in Andrew Krammer, covers the Vikings for the Star Tribune right now. Andrew, I'm going to engage you on some film review in a minute, but first, 3 hot takeaways. It's week 2 of the hot takeaways, and they're only getting hotter right now.
I can't wait.
As the Vikings get better, the takes get hotter. That's as promised, as advertised. I got to do it. So here is hot takeaway number 1 from that game. The Vikings could lead the league in sacks this season. They are actually leading the league in sacks right now with 11 through 2 games. They could lead the league in sacks this season.
Yeah, that's not too hot. Actually, you're starting mild. I like it. I think that's kind
of hot because I didn't think they were a lead the league in sacks kind of team coming into the season. You take away Daniil Hunter, then you say they're going to lead the league in sacks, but
that is, yeah. 2 weeks ago, I totally would have said too spicy for me. Now, though, after seeing what they did against a pretty good Niners front in terms of the offensive line and what they have in front of Purdy, they won one-on-one matchups. So I don't think that's too crazy. And when I look at what the contributors are doing, it's not just Jonathan Grenard. It's not just Andrew Van Ginkel. It's not just all the crazy blitz packages that we'll get into. It was guys like Pat Jones, who's in his 4th year. He was part of that infamous 2021 third round that, as Mike Zimmer told Mark Craig, he walked out of the room during that third round. He thought it was so bad. Well, Pat Jones is still here, and he's still a pretty good player, or has developed, I should say, into a good player. There was one rep on third down in the first half where he spun Trent Williams around. He was so physical, and that's Pat Jones's game. He's going to play a very, very violent style. It's not going to be speed around the edge like Grenard or Dallas Turner. And he can play his style, and Brian Flores knows how to set it up for success. And he's got 4 sacks now through 2 games. And that's not a type of DJ Wanham fluke that I've been seeing in the past where, okay, these are effort plays where it's taking 7 seconds for him to get there. No, this is quick pressure, and it's stuff that, one of them was unblocked and kind of schemed, but this guy's playing very well outside of just the sack numbers. And that's the kind of depth that when you've also got a first-round pick and Dallas Turner on the bench, I don't think it's too crazy for you to say that, hey, this team might lead the league in sacks this year after seeing what they can do on the field.
Zimmer probably could have used him on Sunday in Dallas. 44 points. His old nemesis, Alvin Kamara, not 6 touchdowns, but 4, 3 on the ground, 1 in the air. That was not his best defensive showing.
It was not. No, you're right. Mike Zimmer might have wanted to stay in the room for Pat Jones, at least what he developed into. That's certainly the case.
Okay, this will lead into number 2. Okay, it was Brock Purdy telling Brian Flores, defensive coordinator, your scheme is crazy after the game. We just talked about Zimmer. We're talking about Flores. I'm going to say right now, this is the best Vikings defense since 2017. That takes some good Zimmer defenses out of the mix. 2018, 2019, even part of 2020 before they got hurt. I almost went back to 2015, but I was like, okay, 2017, they were the top-ranked defense in the NFL, both yards and points. We can't go that far back. But I'm saying this is their best defense since 2017.
Yeah, that's also not too crazy. I got to see it for the duration, right? I think that's even because holistically that you want to see them do this for 17 games in terms of the run, the pass. Jordan Mason still went for 100 yards on 20 carries. They still gave up 400 yards. They played so well on critical downs, on third downs, on fourth downs, and that was honestly that was a hallmark of the Mike Zimmer defenses. You rank number one by limiting the yardage, which they didn't do on Sunday, but Zimmer's defense has always played so well on those key downs, got the opponent off the field, and that's clutch, including the red zone spot, the stops that they had, 2 turnovers on downs. One of them was at midfield. They're playing really well, and that goes back to coaching too. I think Brian Flores, if you polled the NFL, I think Brian Flores would probably rank up there with Mike Zimmer among the best defensive minds and most well-respected defensive minds in the league. And you're seeing it. And they got talent too. What they have in common with a team like 2017 is they've got veterans woven into a lot of young talent. Daniil Hunter was in his 3rd year that year, but Everson Griffin, Brian Robinson, obviously Harrison Smith was in his prime at that moment, but they had Xavier Rhodes also entering his prime. They had a lot of talent that was young, and then they had the guys who had been there and knew how to line people up. And there are moments like even in Sunday's game where Stephon Gilmore, 13th year veteran, will absolutely know this defense inside and out come soon. But there was a moment he had to motion early in the game, and you could see Byron Murphy, kind of position where he needed to be and kind of check him and affirm that, yeah, you're in the right spot. And that's the kind of stuff that if people pay attention to the news around the league, the Packers had a deal with their defense where a rookie lined up in the wrong spot and didn't get to play much for the rest of the game. And Matt LaFleur said afterward, he said, it's on all of us to make sure this kid's lined up properly. There should be veterans helping him. Well, the Vikings defense is doing that. And they're doing that with even 13th year guys in Gilmore, where it'd be really easy to say, you know what, dude, you got it. I'm not even going to pay attention to you. They're all working kind of in one. And that it speaks to the coaching. It speaks to the chemistry. And I do think that when you look at the stats, they're among the older average defenses in the league, but it's because you've got 2 34-year-old guys in there too, and Gilmore and Harrison Smith.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the linebackers, we can't overstate how upgraded they are right now. But Cashman's having a big impact. Van Ginkel, who we talked about a ton last week, again, this week he had the deflection on the goal line on that pass, the 4th down play that stalls that drive. He had a sack. He almost had another Van Ginkel. He almost had another interception on his signature play at the end of the game. He's making an impact as well.
He is too. And there was one I'd forgotten about early in the game when the Niners were backed up against their own goal line trying to get out of it. He keyed on a late George Kittle motion and almost got his hand on another one of those swing passes on a screen to Debo. This guy's so instinctual, so smart. Somebody that the league clearly should have valued more because he only got, I think, $10 million per year on the open market. He's just so versatile and in the right hands, like Brian Flores or Vic Fangio last year in Miami. He can do a lot of things and be very, very good. If you all you did was say, hey, go rush the passer 40 times a game, he's not going to be as impactful for you if you kind of turn him into this jack of all trades, this Josh Metellus of the defensive line. You can really see his game come to life. And so that's another guy when we talk about the depth. It stood out to me, and to put numbers on when we talk about this defensive depth, they had 18 different guys play almost 20% of the snaps yesterday. Wow. They had 13 guys reach that mark last year against the Niners in their win. It just shows you how many more guys are trusted. It's the same defensive staff, same defensive coordinator. They've just got a better roster.
Yeah, they do. No doubt about it. More talent. And they upgraded that a lot in the offseason, and it is showing so far. Yeah. Hot takeaway number 3. I have been one of the foremost critics of the Vikings offensive line for a number of years, dating back even before we started doing any sorts of podcasts, but it's been kind of a yearly gripe of mine. I think this might be their best offensive line since 2009, when they had Favre, when they had a bunch of veterans. They had Hutchinson still back then. They were a solid offensive line back in 2009. I have not seen a better offensive line kind of 1 through 5 since then. Obviously, you get the cornerstone tackles. I think the interior line has actually at least been adequate so far. I know they're going to give up some pressures, but they've been running the ball better. And I don't feel like Sam Darnold has had that like constant in your face up the middle pressure that I worried he was going to get throughout the season.
Yeah, I needed to go back and check and make sure I remembered who was starting on the offensive line in 2017, because I do remember Joe Berger being very good for them. Oh, that's right. It was Nick Easton, Pat Elflein, and Joe Berger in the middle, Riley Reif and Mike Remmers on the outsides. That's the only other offensive line I remember being as cohesive as this group. This group's been together from O'Neal to Darisaw all the way across, including Brandell, who was a backup for a few years. They've been together for, I think, at least 3 years since Ed Ingram was drafted. That's huge. That doesn't happen a lot on offensive lines. And even when Ed Ingram is not playing well, because that is probably where I should have started, he's one of the worst guards, I think, right now, according to Pro Football Focus in the NFL. And yesterday wasn't great for him either. I think he's such a weak link there that I would hesitate to say that they're any kind of great offensive line. But your point might be valid, only in that, Mike, it's damning with faint praise. They haven't had a lot of great offensive line.
No, they have not. I've well documented. I've well documented that. I think the only line I thought of that could contend with this was the 2012 line where everybody made all 16 starts. I don't think it was a great line, but it had continuity, blocked for the Adrian Peterson 2,000 rushing yard season, got to the playoffs with Christian Ponder at quarterback, but that felt like it was more about continuity than it was about excellence.
I think you might be here with this line as well. They have the best tackles they've had maybe since 2009 or well before that. You're right. This is one of the best tackle tandems. And Blake Brandell at left guard has played pretty well.
I think he's been pretty good.
He's given them a physicality in the run game. He hasn't been beaten quickly in pass protection, which is what the most you can ask for from a guy who's stepping in there to start for his first time at that spot. And so it's really Bradbury's fought a knee injury early. He picked it up in that week 1 win at New York. It's been him up and down, and then in Ingram. And they know that. They've schemed around it. They've tried to get Sam Darnold on the move. There was an early third down that Sam Darnold had to pick up with his legs when the coverage had taken away his options downfield, and he had to run. And I think that's also a key difference, Mike, is that this offensive line is going to look better, not just because of Aaron Jones setting up blocks in the run game, but when there is pressure, Sam Darnold can move. And we see that Kirk Cousins, even pre-Achilles, was not moving.
Yeah, and that was going to be that one missed the cut. I'm going to save that one for a week because we didn't see a week 2 of Cousins, but I was almost ready to say dollars or no dollars. Would you rather have Darnold or Cousins right now?
After what we saw week 1 from Atlanta, and there was a couple clips I saw people throwing out there saying, hey, we don't see this go viral. And it's of him actually running and throwing a dart in the end zone when he was in one of the red zone plays, but they didn't score a touchdown. They didn't look good offensively. Statistically, it was horrendous. You just see the coaching be so conservative with him. I do wonder, and honestly, Zach Robinson, I think, is a first-year coordinator coming from the Rams running that thing under Raheem Morris. You just got to wonder how much the coordinator's figuring his thing out while Kirk is figuring out what he can do, and then they're learning each other. It's going to take time. But Kirk would have looked differently here. He still would have looked good, I think, here, even if he would have been less mobile than he already was, because the Vikings knew how to work with that. But Sam Darnold's playing well. I mean, if we're going to talk about him, I think he's playing efficiently. He's making smart decisions. There's only a couple times where you're saying, don't throw that, and he did. But if the way he bounces back, too, from sacks, from critical errors, you're not seeing him drag in a way that in Carolina or with the Jets, you saw him get affected by his negative mistakes. And I think that's definitely a coaching point inside the Vikings building of trying to keep his confidence up. And frankly, it's easy to keep his confidence up when he's playing like this.
One more coordinator note before I ask you for other things you saw on film. We did mention Mike Zimmer. Offensive coordinator for the Saints now is old friend Clint Kubiak, who put 44 on him. So that was probably not Zimmer's favorite thing, in addition to everything else that happened in that game. What else did you see from what you looked back at already from this game? It was plenty of positives, some rough moments too, but by and large, a lot of positive plays on both sides of the ball, and special teams, of course, too.
Yeah, Aaron Jones mentioned to our Mark Craig for the Sunday Story this past week that he's aging like fine wine, and I thought that while watching Harrison Smith in the first half of this game. He's played 133 defensive snaps through the first 2 games. He's taken maybe a handful, 4 or 5 snaps off in these 2 games. Any talk of him playing less is absolutely not happening, and I think it's because he can still ball out. And we saw in the first 3 and out that the 49ers had against the Vikings on their opening drive. Harrison Smith lined up at the line of scrimmage off the right tackle, kind of flirting with the blitz, and then dropped deep into half coverage as if he were 22 years old again. And then Cam Bynum was able to rotate late, take away the deep corner to Debo. Brock Purdy had to check it down to the fullback for 5 yards. That's how you get into 2nd and 5. The next snap, Brian Flores puts him in the same alignment, except Harrison blitzes off that edge. Two wildly different processes, same process with two wildly different results for Harrison on those two snaps, in which he absolutely affected those two plays to force a quick pass and a check down to Brandon Ayuk on that 2nd down. There's just times that you're seeing Harrison Smith play still like he's a Pro Bowler, and that's great to see. I think he's locked in. I think he loves playing for Flores. I think he's motivated in a way that you didn't see at the end of like the 2022 year. You know, it's tough to take a playoff loss the way that they did, but that Ed Donatel scheme just caused a lot of frustration on that defensive side of the ball. And instead, they're going to work every week and kind of thinking, what else can we cook up? And Brian Flores is just very versatile and creative with what he does. And you're seeing him get the most out of Gilmore, out of Harrison Smith, out of guys like Jihad Ward, who comes in as kind of a cast-off from around the league and helps force a turnover in that game. I think that all is very critical when we're talking about them figuring out things with their youth and their depth. And you're allowing guys like Ivan Pace to develop because you bring in Blake Cashman, who takes over the communication in the huddle of the defense so Pace can just play quickly. You've got Van Ginkel doing things up front, so Dallas Turner can play a very limited and key role. They just got a really good blend, and as long as they stay healthy, they keep saying sky's the limit, but coming off a game like that, it certainly seems like it.
Final point here, the Darnold 97-yard touchdown to Jefferson. Great throw, but how surprised were you that they got so aggressive there, just in terms of, 3 yards from your own end zone? San Francisco rushed 5 on that play, if I'm not mistaken. The line holds up, the line that we've talked about already. But to take a shot play that year and just say, okay, we're going to go for it here, not just try to play field position, try to get a first down or two, or at least get out of our own end zone. That didn't feel like what I was expecting from O'Connell and the play call right there.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson said after the game, we practiced that play a lot, just not from the 3-yard line. It's not meant to be a 97-yard touchdown. So that speaks to, you're right, it speaks to the confidence. We all can see it. If you're sitting at home, you can see it. That play call speaks to the confidence they have in Sam Darnold for him to make the right decision in that moment, because a week ago in the debut with him, they were backed up against their own goal line for a 99-yard drive. And that drive started with a run. It started with a schemed rollout, quick pass to Ty Chandler in the flat, followed by another quick run. It was very conservative. It was, we're going to get out of here and make sure we don't screw this up. A week later, Kevin O'Connell's like, full gas, baby. We're doing 97-yard touchdown through the double team to Justin Jefferson. It just shows kind of where they've come from in August in training camp, where much of the talk was, all right, let's see how this goes with Sam, and we'll kind of go from there. And now they're like, nah, man, we've been saying it all along. He's great. So I think they believed it, but I think we all, including them, needed to see it.
Underrated part of that play was Jalen Naylor busting butt all the way down the field to make sure that Jefferson got in the end zone. I like to see that.
Yeah, he throws a little shoulder block, doesn't get the block in the back. Very smart too to do that. Yeah. Oh, and you could see too the speed from him. I think his nickname is speed.
Yes, he was burning down the field. I was like, is he really going to affect this play? And then he did. So, a lot of positives from the film. Of course, we'll see how things go next week against the Texans. Another opportunity for Brian Flores to cook something up against a very good, but also still a very young quarterback in CJ Stroud. So that should be another fun kind of chess match. 2-0 Vikings, only undefeated team in the division, only one of a handful of undefeated teams in the NFC. I didn't see it coming. Maybe you did, but I did not see this coming.
I know neither of us. I don't think anybody really picked in the Viking media core them to win that Niners game. I think everybody thought it's going to be close. They're going to maybe keep it competitive. We like what we saw in week 1, but they forced the issue. And for them to allow 400 yards on defense the way they did, but to really play key shutdown clutch defense on third downs, fourth downs, red zone. Every situation you needed to play well in defensively, they pretty much did. And to do it against a reigning Super Bowl or NFC title contender and Super Bowl contender, it's pretty impressive.
It is indeed. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Mike.
Great stuff from Andrew. Reminder that you can watch the 3 Hot Takeaways segment on the Star Tribune's YouTube channel. Check that out and a lot more videos, and plan to have a lot more to come. Have one up right now with Chip Scoggins talking about his feature on Chip Lowmiller, his Football Across Minnesota feature on Chip Lowmiller, former Gophers great place kicker, kicked for a long time in the NFL, now a fire chief up in central north Minnesota. So go check that out with Chip. Read his feature this morning and check out the video on the Star Tribune YouTube page. We'll have tons more with Lavelle E. Neal III later this week, as well as we do the Daily Delivery debate. It's poetry time on Daily Delivery. The only way to adequately express how we feel about the 2-0 Vikings, my good friend Keith Rashad, with me right now to supply what I'm told is 3 poems about the 23-17 win over the San Francisco 49ers. Sir, is that true?
Yeah,
3 today?
It's 3 poems, but it is all of my soul.
Wow. That's it, huh? Just your soul is 3 poems.
I'm bearing it all through 3 poems, my entire soul, for this segment that nobody listens to.
I hope the Arizona Ice Cats will be proud. Here we go.
What a crazy game. Incredibly hard fought, yet.
Oh boy. So you're gonna make me get at the beat button right the second time?
What? Why are you censoring me? Why are you censoring my soul?
Well, okay. Anyway, it was a sloppy game. Yes. I mean, was it though? I mean, there's some turnovers.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? Like,
yeah.
In one respect, it was such an amazing, hard-fought contest between 2 teams that truly you could see that they were giving it their all, right? And there were so many good, amazing plays on both sides, from both teams, from both sides of the ball. Sometimes the Vikings offense looked amazing, and then sometimes their defense didn't, and there was the same thing for San Francisco. There were times when it was just like one of these incredible contests that you watch sports for. 2 really skilled teams just really going at it. And then there were times when you could hear the Benny Hill music playing.
Right.
And It was just like, Brock Purdy throws, a ball behind him.
Falls right out of his hand. Whoopsie.
Sam Darnold runs backwards into a sack, just like silly, stupid, crazy stuff, fumbling at the goal line and just a blocked punt. And then that crazy almost dropped punt return where each team had 45 chances to recover it, right? So there were times when the game was just utterly ridiculous. And so it's hard to discern in some respects what the game was, because in many instances it was this incredible contest between 2 highly skilled teams that make watching sports fun, and sometimes it was a weird little clown show, like these interjections of stupidity.
That's kind of what the NFL is these days, though, right? I mean, it is a lot of that. I mean, sometimes you don't get the good parts of that, but a lot of the action can be kind of clownish these days. I did think it was a pretty good game. Again, we would get way ahead of ourselves if we made too much of it, but the kind of level of intensity and the level of both sides kind of like swarming to the ball. Like it had the feel of, and it's not a playoff game, but it had the feel of, it was a certain kind of intensity that you don't always get from week 2 of the NFL season. You could tell the Vikings really wanted this game. You could tell that Kevin O'Connell had them in a spot where they were like, listen, guys, this is a prove it game. We got to prove it in this game. Of course, you always want to win, stuff like that, but it had a certain intensity level that you don't always get, especially this early in the season. So I was I was pretty impressed. I thought it was a pretty good game, but you're right. There were definitely moments where it was like, yeah, maybe don't do that. If you want to truly win this game, I mean, there was 2 touchdown drives of over 90 yards, almost 3. I think the Vikings have a good chance of winning every time they have a game where Justin Jefferson catches a 97-yard touchdown, though. I think that's a good thing for them to do.
Well, it had the feel of an important game, right?
Yeah.
It very much had the feel of an important game, but there were just these weird moments, right? And I don't know that I think that I kind of get your point. Is sometimes things just happen in football games, but it's not every game that a quarterback just doesn't throw the ball.
No,
like cocks the arm back and doesn't throw the ball.
No.
And
yeah. it just falls right out of there. Just falls right out of there. Whoops.
So part of it is maybe it was just week 2 and there's silliness, but it did have the feel of an important game, and most of that game was just really fun to watch.
Do you think Purdy has small hands like Dante?
Boy, that's a really good question.
I'll have to go check the measurables from the combine. We'll check that out later. Okay, give me number 2.
Terror and horror. A reoccurring nightmare made of Fred Warner.
Well, he's pretty good. I mean, that game, here's the thing. I think you're probably hinting at that here, but that game, it could have been a 2-touchdown win if not for Fred Warner totally, punches the ball out at the 1-yard line. He has the interception earlier when the Vikings were looking to take control. He was, terrorizing the quarterback. Sometimes he is quite good. But yeah, I mean, it was in, a yard away from being 27-7 around the fourth quarter. Impressive that they were able to kind of retake momentum with that field goal drive that kind of clinched the game. But it was a weird game where the Vikings won. It felt satisfying, but it also felt like they could have won by more. The score was not quite indicative of quite how much they controlled some of that game.
Well,
if not for Warner.
San Francisco, yes, exactly. San Francisco's a very good football, obviously a very good football team. But the reason why that game was close was because of him.
Yes.
He was the reason why that game was close. It should have been perhaps a little bit more lopsided were it not for the fact that he was absolutely phenomenal. And it felt like at least once, if not multiple times during a drive, he would do something or you would hear about him. But it also goes to speak to, again, right, there were the moments of ridiculousness, but overall, this was just 2 good teams making good plays on both sides of the ball. And he's sort of indicative. He was the best of the best in that respect.
I agree with that.
Justin Jefferson had, of course, his amazing 97-yard catch. But in terms of overall impact on the game, he was the player of the game and demonstrated just the level of skill that was happening in this contest. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree with that. By the way, should it be legal for a guy to just like punch the ball? Like he did that to knock out the ball when Jones had it. He knocked the ball away from Darnold when he's going out of bounds on that kind of drive that ended up being the game clinching drive. Like, I don't know that a full on punch of the ball should be legal. I think ripping it out, yeah. Punching it when you might like actually accidentally punch somebody instead of punching the ball. I'm not sure I like that rule.
Yeah, well, all I remember is back in junior high when we would play football, you'd try that ridiculously.
I did. I tried to punch the ball. No, I did not.
Oh, yes, you did.
I
all
did?
The time, man.
What?
All the time.
I've tried to punch the ball out.
I think you're a hypocrite, is what I'm saying.
I don't believe I did that. I don't remember.
I think you're a
doing
homer who thinks that it only should not happen to the team that he likes.
As I tell my children when they think I'm lying, it doesn't sound like something I would do. Okay, number 3.
Don't you dare do this. I have invested too much. I'm so sick of hope.
Well, that's the thing, right? They're 2-0. I thought they'd be potentially 0-2, staring down the gauntlet of 0-6.
I was promised this was a 7-win team.
I thought it was. The only one who was optimistic was Royce. So, and that he was probably just being a contrarian. Like the only one I know who was optimistic about this on our staff or pretty much anywhere. Like all the projections were like probably not a playoff team, 6 or 7 wins. And that still might happen. Again, it's early, but they look better than that right now. They do. And the defense is the reason. And you look at this and you say, okay, you didn't on offense, you didn't have Addison for the whole game. You still don't have Hawkinson. Jefferson played 3 quarters, albeit an impactful 3 quarters, but he missed, that last very important drive. They start out with Jalen Naylor and Tristan Jackson as their 2 wide receivers on, the drive where you got to have it. And they got it done. Brandon Powell helped out too in those 3 wide receiver sets. But yeah, the defense is awfully good if they stay healthy. This is a top 10 defense. It just is. You watch them play. It's a top 10 defense. If it can be a top 18, top 15 offense, this can be a team that wins 9 or 10 games instead of 6 or 7. I think maybe we have to recalibrate even this early in the season.
I was promised this was a 7-win team. I was told by the pundits, I was told by the lamestream media that this was a middling team with a top end of maybe 9 wins. And now here we are. Right.
I know.
Here we are. Is the week 1 was, well, can they beat the Giants? Boy, if they don't beat the Giants, I don't know.
It's true.
And then they destroy the Giants, then they beat the 49ers,
yes.
right? And Houston did not look that good last night against Chicago in what I watched, right? And everybody said, okay, next year's the year when then maybe we can start getting excited. And so I set my expectations as, okay, we're going to have just a middling year, fine, whatever.
Yep.
Right. I do not want to get excited about this team. I don't want to do it. Because we are 1 injury to a veteran cornerback away from things looking much worse.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Heaven forbid Sam Darnold not make it through the year, because then it's going to get ridiculous.
Then it's Nick Mullins' time.
Right. The offensive line has played actually reasonably well.
I think they're a good line. I think they're a good. This is the best line I think they've had for a while. I do.
But if we have even the slightest slip up there, right?
Yeah.
Or if some of these injuries to the wide receivers start piling up or lingering, if Hawkinson can't come back when we think, or Addison has ankle problems, right? It is so fragile right now.
I agree with that.
And it's so easy, but it's also so easy to get sucked into what is happening because this is unexpected, right? Again, 7-win team. And when you start 2-0, right, the climb to 7 wins is shorter, not very far at that point, right? So you start having perhaps some expectations, or maybe building some expectations, or having some thoughts about what it could be. And we talked about it early in the first time we did this. If 7 things go right for this team, they could be better than what they expect. But expecting all 7 of those things to go right is fool's gold. And so here we are at this moment where we can have joy and hope, and we can enjoy that victory because it was a fun, well-played game. But I don't want to believe,
right?
Because I know what is the most likely outcome here.
I think it's okay to enjoy the now while also understanding it's fragile. I also think that if we think 7 things have to go right, the 2 most important things are that the defense has to be as good as we think they could be and stay relatively healthy. Let's count that as 1. And 2, Sam Darnold has to play at a competent level. We've definitely seen those so far. Like, Darnold is the biggest X factor. Like, he's played a level or 2 above anything I would have expected from him. Like, he didn't have to do a ton against the Giants, but he did make some good throws. Against the 49ers, he was just a good quarterback. He was a capable starting quarterback who wasn't just asked to manage the game. They said, okay, you got to go make some throws here. We're gonna put you in your own end zone against a 5-man rush, and we're going to ask you to throw the ball 55 yards to Justin Jefferson in the air. And he did that. We're going to ask you to execute a drive down the stretch where we need points. We need to take time off the board. And he did that. So he's the biggest X factor. I don't know how sustainable his play is, but if he plays anywhere close to this level, that's where the recalibration has to take place. Doesn't mean they're a playoff team automatically. Doesn't mean you have to say, I've got all this hope, but that changes things. Just how well he's playing right now does change how you have to think about this.
We're one cornerback injury away.
Or quarterback.
Yes, from it looking much, much worse than it is right now.
Yes.
And I'm so sick of hope.
I don't know if the poems are going to be that positive all year, but you got to appreciate this for what it is right now, right? Vikings are off to a better start than anyone could have imagined. They look better than anybody would have predicted. So just enjoy it while you can. We'll see where the long term takes this team. But right now, this feels like a pretty good team and a very good defense. Let's finish with the cooler. Lynx, Connecticut tonight at Connecticut. Lynx trying to give themselves a chance at the number 1 seed in the WNBA, trying to lock down at least the number 2 seed. Beat Connecticut, you're assured of no worse than the 2 seed. Lose, you still have to win on Thursday before the playoffs start Sunday. Keeping that positive momentum going too. They've been great all year. They've been tremendous since the Olympic break ended. So we will see what the Lynx have in store tonight, but a big game against Connecticut to see where this all stands. They are 2 games up on Connecticut as we speak right now. So not all is lost if they lose tonight, but it would be nice to see them go in and, do this New York, Connecticut trip with a 2-0 record would be pretty impressive. A lot of momentum, a lot of confidence going into the postseason. That will do it for me today. Randy Johnson expected to join me on tomorrow's show, as will Chip Scoggins. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow.